Special Operations Training Detachment, SOD West, Burrow Team. Coming at you from NTC, Off the Radar.
This is Off the Radar. I'm Captain Weston Rich, an observer coach trainer for the Green Berets at the National Training Center. Hey, welcome back. This is the fourth and final part of our conversation with Andrew, Mike, and Spencer. If you haven't heard any of the previous parts, please go back. They're all great. I highly recommend starting at part 1 and working your way forward. In this episode, you will hear about operating with limited resources to influence the local population and sway them from supporting the Blue 4 to supporting the opposing force, and how the use of messaging can amplify those effects. Awesome example vignette about how CA, PSYOP, and SF integrate and then nest with a conventional force to provide immediate value, like across your warfighting functions and the domains. So I think you mentioned that you might have another story about how you guys really got after doing multi-domain operations and like producing effects across each one of your specific tribes and then getting value to Black Horse. So I'll just turn it over to you, Andrew, and you can start it off.
For sure. So obviously we saw on the ODA what CA and PSYOPs could do for us at that point, and we're like, all right, hey, it's our turn to pay it forward. So the next urban population center that we had templated was Barisu, and that's where the U.S. brigade was trying to move to. And during the targeting cycle, that's when both Mike and Spence had, identified the civil population there as targets. And I'll hand it over to you guys to kind of talk about what you were trying to get after. But basically, we were able then to put the ODA into Barisu first, establish an MSS and basically give them the, hey, you guys are all clear. We've tied in with the conventional company commander. He's tracking you guys are coming in. We've adjusted our security posture, and we're basically your overwatch element so you guys can actually deliver effects that they had. So
this is where one of the core competencies of SOF CA is civil network development. And in civil network development, we use that to kind of get a pulse on what the civil populace is doing in that area. And this is where I said you need to stay tied into PSYOP because they are scrubbing the information space faster than we can while I'm trying to manage my civil network. And so when PSYOP is telling me, hey, there's like a food shortage or food crisis or any sort of crisis in this area, and then my network is also telling me the same thing, then it's like out of the mouth of two witnesses, I have some pretty solid information that I can work on, and I need a problem set that I need to start attacking. Well, as Red, we kind of realized, hey, every country is going to have their own non-government organizations that support their own country or other countries co-located or maybe farther away. And they're always willing to help and they're always willing to support. Well, as Red CA, we didn't have the basic non-government organizations that we normally would have. And so we got permission to kind of create one because this is the first time Red CA had ever done anything. Like the first Red CA ever, right? So we didn't have that stuff built up.
And scenarioism aside, right? There's a potential where you're going into a country and they don't have their own NGO. So that was a gap that Mike identified. So he went and made his own.
So we found an NGO. We utilized our civil network to make sure that those deliveries came in from Denovia into Bertuni. And we used that network to then get it into Barisu. And while the food was in Barisu, we then found the Black Horse soldiers. We said, hey, come here. I need you guys to give this to the local population in the city because you are the face of the entire movement. I'm in plain clothes. You are a Denovian soldier. Please hand out this food. This is going to buy you guys grace and freedom maneuver in the city because you are the partner of choice, right? And that's the information space that we were fighting in Bertuni is who's the real partner of choice. This country that touches Bertuni is right next door to them. Like they share blood, they share a language, or a country coming out of nowhere, coming into their country to say like, hey, this is the correct way of doing it, right? So we got these much needed resources that we found that they needed, food, using our network into Barasu. The Black Horse soldiers then passed them out, which then bought us favor in the area, buying Black Horse favor in the area. And then do you want to touch on your guys? Oh, and using that whole key leader engagement, talking to people. There was a news organization, the INN, right? The INN. The INN came in and they started asking questions. They started, hey, what's going on here? Taking pictures. And me and my guys, we discovered that the INN was Blue 4 propaganda. So they were only there to take...
No, news.
Yeah, news. They were only there to take what we were doing, to spin it, to match the coalition forces' propaganda narrative. And by identifying that, we could let the Black Horse leadership in the area know, don't let your soldiers talk to these guys, or if they do, be very specific what they're going to say, because they're going to spin it. And we also could let the ODA know, hey, these guys are in the area, you need to change your security posture. We now have this overarching theme of, okay, anytime you see the INN, know that they are not pro-Denovia, they're not going to help us in any way, and whatever story they publish is going to be counterintuitive to what narrative our PSYOPers are pushing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was the narrative?
So the narrative was that the Denovian military, the food bank of Denovia, were filling the gaps of the Pertuni government, right? Because they weren't able to provide food for those people. So in lieu of that, we were able to use a Denovian NGO with Denovian military handing out those boxes to the civilian population. And it put the Blue 4 media sources, the INN, and even those personalities on social media, it put them in a bind because they weren't able to dispute what was actually happening on the ground because we had tangible results of what was going on. So it actually forced some of them to acknowledge that, hey, maybe Denovia is filling this gap here that they're not able to provide. There was even some skewing of the narrative, like, hey, what may seem like a gift now isn't really a gift, So, but we put them in a bind where they had to acknowledge it, and they also knew that there was food going to other places. So I think it forced their hand to speed up their ability to provide aid to the people of Nebron. We saw press statements from the Dagger Brigade, again from the governor of the province, from INN. And then second and third order effects, right? We're trying to develop civil resistance to the U.S. mill. And if we can highlight good things that the Denovian military is doing, that's what it provides. Because we knew that there was a fight coming to Barasu. We know that the U.S. military is going to try to get all of those people out of there, right? To remove that dilemma off the battlefield. We want to keep those people there. Our next messages were to stay and fight. Look what Denovia's provided for you. Why would you let the U.S. come and take that from you? So we kind of were like planting seeds for our narratives in the future.
And this was my favorite part of the whole thing, right? Our plan was a layered effect plan with the ODA of what cities, where do we need to go. And so when we were developing the network, we made sure that these food deliveries happened in a very timely, layered effect. And my favorite part of this whole thing is while we're delivering food in Barasu, everyone's posting about it. And then you have people in Nebron, which is a coalition force occupied city at the time. And they're like, well, we don't have food. Like the Denovians are handing out food in a Denovian controlled area. There's an American controlled city and we're still not getting food. And someone tweeted, hey, as soon as the coalition forces push out all the Denovians, we'll deliver food. Well, they tweeted about that. People are like, okay, cool. Like America is going to help us. Well, in the next hour, my civil network through proxy delivered food to a contested area that I didn't have freedom of maneuver to get into, but he did because he's a local national and delivered that food drop in Nebron. And then we controlled the entire airwave for the next 24 hours because Denovia did something the United States couldn't.
The food's marked from Denovia.
Right. In a city controlled by the United States. So by CA guys who are listening, CA by proxy is extremely important. And when you develop that network is going to reach places that you can never reach. And you're going to be able to have effects that allow freedom of maneuver and support for whatever cause you're having, which then in turn affects how PSYOPers can push their narrative and how ODA can maneuver on the battlefield.
So win-win, right? In the city of Barasu, which was controlled by Black Horse, Denovia, they are now the face of aid to the civilian population. So now that, E4, E5 who's walking through the city, instead of having to like turn his back every second or dedicate more security within the inner perimeter, he goes, oh, these guys love me. In fact, they're on my side now. So I just freed up that company commander, his basically inner cordon of the city. And then conversely, down in Hebron, which is currently occupied by the coalition in the U.S., now he has to dedicate more inner cordon security because he's not sure where the population's sitting at. And up until that point, they were both fence-sitting populations, and what we were able to identify through civil reconnaissance as well as, the PSYOPs monitoring the wave. And then within a 8-hour span, both of those cities are now on the side of the Denovians. So then taking that back to Reaper and the conventional force, they're like, oh my gosh, you guys just secured the city that I already had, and you're creating disruption in the city that's owned by the coalition.
Yeah, and you're taking something off of their plate because they're not, to Mike's point, they're not dedicating more military assets to protect what they already have on the ground, because we get, like, the conventional force here on either side is like worried about that tank on tank fight, infantry on infantry, maneuver warfare. Rightly so, it's something they need to train on. However, just because we're doing multi-dimensional operations in large-scale combat doesn't mean you neglect the people in the place that you're operating in. And by doing everything you guys just described, you're like, hey, Black Horse, I'm providing you value because I just took a big thing off of your plate, and you can focus on what you're really good at.
Yeah.
And we can focus on what we're good at.
And in unconventional warfare, like, we are discrediting the organization that said that they're there to help.
Yeah.
Which is, like, you can't put a price tag on that.
Yeah.
Because like you just said, the civil populace now is pro us.
Mm-hmm.
They're more willing to listen to what we have to say in the narrative and messaging that we're pushing.
Yeah. And to that point, right, when we're looking at RSOF in LISCO, to the conventional forces out there, SOF is designed to operate in the human domain. We don't expect that. We don't want you guys to have to worry about that because, to your point, Wes, it's like we want you guys going out, smoking gunnery, smoking your platoon and company live fires, and then understand that if you're having that problem in the human domain wherever you're occupying, that's the time to then reach up for that RFS, that request for support for SOF. Like, hey, we don't know what's going on here. We don't have the bandwidth to take care of this problem, but now I know who the person it is.
And this is where reserve CA and soft CA are different, because when we're operating in there, we're trained to operate in politically sensitive, denied, and hostile environments.
Yeah.
And some of those cities are all three of those at one time, which is where we all come into play. And this is one thing that I kind of want to touch on too, right? The ODA was in the city first, so they let us know the security posture before we're rolling in. So we're creating our plan. They're giving us the information on the ground. We roll in. We kind of do like a link up, and then we are operating knowing that bad guy or good guys with guns, however you look at it, are there to help us if things go awry. Because I work in a 4-man team and he has a whole ODA, right? So It's that mutual support one more time of being able to assist each other. And then when we leave, because they got the food there, now the civil populace is stoked that Black Horse and this ODA are there, and they're going to do whatever they can as early warning, listening points. They're getting a pulse on the civil populace in other areas. And now my network is even stronger because now I'm getting reach backs from all these other cities. We're able to use the messaging because it's pro Denovia. It's like, hey, America's spinning their wheels to go into Barasu. Early warning for our ODA. Hey guys, heads up. Like, things are coming in. Hey, Black Horse, heads up. The horde is moving in your direction.
Yeah, 100%. It's when we identified Barasu as our next target, the big concern we had as the cross-functional team is like, how do we get, a 4-man element who, at that point, right, they can't be worried about their security. They have to be coordinating the food drop. Same thing for Spence's guys who came in there, because simultaneous to CA doing the food drop, we had the PSYOPs team actually putting print media out there for the recruiting effort. It's like, all right, hey, CA and PSYOPs, their action's on in Barasu. But what are we missing from, just a principles of patrolling perspective? when they're doing actions on, they don't have security. So, hey, that's when the ODA comes in. And then when we look at the, RSOF and conventional convergence and integration, it's like, okay, hey, how much can, 12 guys can realistically, and what we ended up doing was just local security for them. But in terms of the outer cordon, made coordinations with that company commander. And so now the CA and the PSYOP team have total freedom of maneuver for their actions on. So if you're, that's another key thing, I think, when you're adopting this cross-functional team approach, the principles of patrolling, they don't go out the window. You have to treat everything as a tactical objective. You have to recon the objective. You have to secure the objective. You have to plan it just how you would any other tactical operation. Sure, your actions on might not be clearing a building, but you still have maneuver forces going on the objective.
Yeah. All right. So as we get to wrapping this conversation up, we'll do a quick lightning round with some last questions. I'll jump at Mike with CA. So, first time there was a opposition force civil affairs team out here, what was it like looking through the adversary's lens and conducting civil affairs?
Yeah, it was a lot easier. I kind of mentioned it with the Bear Sioux approach, right? Wherever we go, there's going to be civil affairs, or if they don't call themselves that, doing the exact same mission we are, but for their country.
Yeah.
And if they are co-located or their country touches the country that they're trying to occupy, they have that immediate legitimacy, right? Where me as blue now coalition, as where I sit with the United States, I'm going to this foreign country and I'm trying to work with these people who I don't have anything in common with, because we speak different languages sometimes, and I'm talking through an interpreter, or I don't know their way of life, which is where me being a subject matter expert, trying to be in their cultures, builds or brings me legitimacy.
Yeah.
Where being Red CA, I automatically had legitimacy because I spoke their language. I was part of them. Heck, I probably even had family in the scenario from Pertuni when I lived in Denovia.
Yeah.
So I have a head start. That's my home ground. That's my home turf. And so it was easier to look at that lens where I'm trying to make this connection. Connection is already there. It's in our blood. Hey, look, we're here. We're not leaving anywhere. Our countries touch each other. Where am I going to go? Across the ocean? I'm here to stay, basically.
Yeah. Spencer, what recommendations would you have for a TPT, TPD to come out here and do the red PSYOP, the adversary? How does that differ, if it does, from the blue side, in terms of the way that you approach messaging and the information operations?
I don't think my approach differed in any way. I will say be creative. Use the authorities you have to your advantage. I know you're doing a complete 180, and I didn't focus on what Blue Soft was doing at any point. At no point did we think, what are the blue PSYOP guys out there doing? We focused on the task at hand and what the commander's intent was with the maneuver unit. So don't stray away from that. As PSYOP, we tend to kind of go down our own lane and put ourselves in a corner and take this unilateral approach. Don't do that. Stay integrated, as we've harped on the whole time. Integrate from the jump, joint mission analysis, and then be creative in your approach. You know what your targets are, and then just utilize that from the ground base. From everything we look at as target audiences and our analysis, I think we stayed on track with everything I would do as a blue PSYOPer. I just had different authorities to do that.
Awesome. All right. Andrew, what did you learn that you didn't know before about CA and PSYOP through this operation as the cross-functional team?
They absolutely take bandwidth off the ODA, and they serve warfighting functions. You just got to know, you give them an intent, you give them a left and right limit, and then you step back and you watch these guys go to work, right? And we all know that an ODA is able to create effects disproportionate to their size. But at the end of the day, we're still 12 dudes. And when we're running hard. And it's very easy to become task saturated on the ODA. But then when you have, another person that can fill an intel function, another person who can fill a fires and an effects function, you're gonna take some of that bandwidth off of the GBs, and they're going to be able to do more with the time and space you afforded them that CA and PSYOPs are giving you.
Okay. And then just for all of you guys, like biggest thing you learned during the rotation, and what are you going to take out of this rotation?
For me, it was like, oh man, we're going to NTC. Ugh. Right. But no, CTCs are absolutely a valuable training venue. And it just affords you opportunities and growing pains that you're never going to get at home station. And I'll get off the X with this, right? I don't want to be ungrateful. So kind of going top down to 11 ACR, to Black Horse. Thank you guys so much for this opportunity to work with you guys, to learn from you guys, from all the 04s and 05s that I got to interact with. Particular big special thanks to everyone at Task Force Reaper, and then to every platoon leader and company commander that I got to interact with. You guys are professional, you're well-trained, and you're awesome counterparts to work with. And then transitioning to kind of the RSOF community, to Mike and Spencer, your teams were, my guys walked away as better GBs from having to get to work with you guys. And I have to extend that to your guys' company commanders and your battalion commanders. Thank you so much for trusting us to work alongside those guys, because it was an amazing experience. And then wrapping it up kind of on the GB side of the house, to everyone at 10th Group who gave us this opportunity, from the group commander, my battalion commander, and company commander. We're super grateful for this opportunity. We didn't take it lightly, and we hope that we were able to educate the force and get some good lessons learned. And we know it doesn't stop here at this podcast. We gotta take what we learned here and disseminate that. But we're just super grateful for the opportunity from my ODA and to everyone.
Yeah, it's hard to follow something like that, right? And I feel like Andrew.
Yeah, that's why I pointed at you, Mike. I don't want to say anything.
Yeah, he just like closed it up.
I know he actually got ahead of what we were doing, but that's fine.
Hey, that's my bad. I thought I was getting off the X with those. So.
I know.
Yeah, he's right though. Black Horse allowing us to come into their home. It's weird having strangers come over for the first time, but then welcoming us. Wow, words are hard sometimes. With open arms, letting us into their fridge, their coolers, keeping us going and keeping us informed, which is huge. And then for the Borough team and SOT D for allowing Red CA to have this opportunity the first time to show our worth and show, man, we can have some crazy effects if you let us off the leash and you let us do our jobs, what we've been trained to do. And that was the first time, that was eye-opening for me, is fighting our doctrine for the first time without having a leash pull me back, and the effects that we're able to have. And that was one of the big lessons learned, is when we work as a tribe. I hate using that word sometimes, but legitimately a tribe with the same end state, the same goals, same effects. We are unstoppable. Like, we can accomplish any mission set, which is huge. And then one smaller minor detail for any other CA team that's about to do this: you need to tie in with the Fox faster than I did. The moment you tie in with the ODA's Fox, you two can work off each other, and then bring in PSYOP into the fold, and the three of you can analyze, acquire, and hit targets inside the opposition's OODA loop faster than anyone else if the three of you are working in harmony. So those are kind of the main takeaways that I got from this rotation.
Awesome. Appreciate it. And I'll let our J39 planner, Major Justice, know how awesome you thought Red CA was, and because she was one of the champions of that idea and that effort, and we'll see if we can continue this in future rotations. Spencer, you're up.
Yeah, so the 6-year gap since I've been to NCC as a NCO in RSOF, it has built up immensely. It is a fully interactive environment, and it's some of the best training I've received as PSYOP, because I can't think of anywhere else. I haven't been to JRTC yet, so I don't know what's going on down there. But as far as an interactive environment with platforms to disseminate, where there's very little white carding and you can actually see effects, that is invaluable for us. Especially my team, this is their first experience outside of the course. So this was their first experience to come out here. We developed our own internal systems and processes. We got to integrate with an ODA and with the CAT, and we got to actually do our job and not just white card things and go through motions. So that was amazing, extremely beneficial. I got to watch those young guys grow right in front of me, and I think they're more confident as an RSOF soldier and like, hey, we actually do have a place and we can create effects, and this is our job. So they got to see that. So I thought that was invaluable. I know there's a lot of preconceived notions about coming out here, but I think the only way, I told my guys, the only way to get into this is to like get fully into it and just go full scenario. And I think they did a really good job. And I couldn't ask for a better ODA and a better CAT for this to be my guys' first experience. Like just the full acceptance and like willingness to just come together immediately. It was an outstanding experience from start to finish. The SOTD OCTs, Sergeant First Class Brado and Captain Plummer, they were awesome, providing us everything we needed as soon as we got here, and just letting us go, be creative, do our job. And if we made a mistake, it's okay. We were out here to train, and they were able to identify it, coach us through it, and we were able to move on and get some effects. So I had a great time. 10 of 10. Would do again.
All
Definitely.
right. Awesome points all around, particularly like Spencer, your point on the mentality and the way you approach the scenario goes for any kind of training. You get way more out of it. I've been guilty of having a sour face on at times in training. So I'm glad that, as the detachment leadership, you got your team really focused and keyed in on the scenario. I'll do a quick summary because we talked about a lot of different things, how to prepare for the rotation, kind of what the rotation looks like, experiences prior to this at CTCs, both on the conventional side and the ARSOF side. How you guys integrated, that was a big chunk of our discussion as a cross-functional team. Not really something that we see that much anymore because that kind of was an idea in a few years past, and then people, I guess, maybe didn't do as good of a job as you guys did, and they were like, do we really want to do this? But sounds like you guys knocked it out of the park, and maybe your white paper will convince proponent, branch, all that good stuff to go back to that idea. I mean, groups are integrating. PSYOP and CA are integrating with SF groups by their area of responsibility, so that's going to be interesting to see how that works. I think at the tactical level, you guys are a case study on it. It's going to be good at the tactical level, and then beyond that, who knows? That's a big question mark for the future. And then how you guys integrated with Black Horse, which was your conventional force, for lack of a better word, partner, or who you were working with on the conventional side. And then just some awesome vignettes to really highlight how you guys really integrated, and then finishing off with some lessons learned through those vignettes. And normally I turn it back over for any final thoughts, alibis, or we can just close this thing out.
I guess in my laundry list of thanks, I forgot to mention SOTD and our OCs.
Whatever.
So, hey, Justin, Mike, I guess you guys are pretty cool. No, all jokes aside, we really appreciate. We could tell you guys were invested in the ODA, the cross-functional team, and our success, and we appreciate everything that you guys did out here. And then, got to hammer it home again, Mike, Spence. Thank you guys for your leadership, and total credit to your guys, right? Because they bought in and they were excited, which made my guys excited. And looking forward. We know the journey doesn't end here for the three of us. We got to start chinning up some good products to inform the force at large. But yeah, thanks for reaching out and letting us on the podcast as well, Wes. Micah.
I'm glad you guys carved out the time for this. This was awesome.
Yeah, I got to thank my company commander for taking a risk on me and my boys and my guys. If they ever listen to this, they crushed it. They came out here like guns a-blazing, ready to get after it. And Andrew and his ODA, man, what an environment that he has, that he's built in that team and that community, allowing us to just...
My team sergeant and the guys.
Yeah,
I'm a small piece of that.
Just fit in so flawlessly, and for Spencer and his dudes willing to work. And like you said, we all went in there with the same mindset as we're going to work hard. We're going to row together, and we're going to row really hard. And I think our actions show how much buy-in we all had together, and our willingness to work together and kind of make this work to prove this point that if you put your pride aside and you focus strictly on the mission, how successful we can be together, which is kind of these brilliant brain heads somewhere in the sphere have yeah, we need these 3 tribes to kind of work together. And then when we do, look what we're able to accomplish.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's a key point. Is I'm thankful for the opportunity, and I hope there's more in the future. I think these are just like too few and like not often enough. So I'm glad that we got to capitalize on this moment to put all of our brains together, put all our teams together, and create these effects. And I'm just hoping there's more opportunities. So.
And we're not blowing smoke.
Yeah.
Don't dread a red CTC rotation because this is straight up epic.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Please go back to your formations and let them know about this podcast. And, we'll send it out to each of you when this actually gets published, so you can be like, hey, check it out. I was on the airwaves for one. I don't know. But thanks.
Thank you for listening to Off the Radar, where ARSOF prepares for conflict. Like, subscribe, and share on your listening platform. Actions will determine the outcome.